hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining and being patient as we are all getting set up. Um, it's an exciting day for some of you. You may be celebrating Eid or just the day before Eid. So I know that's a momentous occasion for you, and congratulations to all of you. Um, I am excited to welcome an amazing advisor to ZNotes and a wonderful mentor to hundreds of people before, especially in their study abroad journey. Russell has been engaged across various spaces, previously at Into, which helps students get into university, and now based in Canada and working on an initiative called Edset. I'd love to, ask Russell to introduce himself and talk a little bit more about the session he's going to be presenting today. So, Russell, over to you.
Thanks very much, Zubair. Thank you for the introduction. Can I just check quickly that you and everybody else can still hear me okay and can still see me and the presentation slide?
Yep, all looks great.
Excellent. Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation and the opportunity to join everybody today. It's 6 a.m. here. I think it's 1 p.m. in the UK and probably later in various other parts of the world. So I appreciate everybody joining regardless of what the time is. And to echo Zubair's words, congratulations to anybody that's celebrating Eid out there. Very much looking forward to this session. We are going to go through a discussion and a presentation on life and career essentials for international students. I'm really excited to be engaging with the ZNotes platform and speaking with you guys about a topic which is very close to my heart. It's also my day-to-day in terms of the work that I do and the students that I support, and something that I've been through personally myself as well. So my understanding is that a number of you will be on a journey at the moment, or preparing for a journey which will see you going to study overseas in the near-term or longer-term future. It's an immensely exciting time and period of life to prepare for. So hopefully this presentation contains some information and a couple of pearls which will be helpful for you and interesting and useful as you can then continue down that track. So on that note, let's begin. I've outlined here a quick agenda of what we're going to go through. Zubair, can I just check that the slides are working when I click to change through?
They are working perfectly fine, yes.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to go through a quick speaker introduction, just so you guys know a little bit about who's speaking today. We're then going to split the rest of the presentation into a couple of different main categories. So the first one of those is study abroad. We're going to look at a case study, key considerations, and some beyond the classroom do's and don'ts. We're then going to look at working while you study, which as we go through the presentation, you will see is a very important part or feature of the study abroad journey, which I'm going to talk about at a bit of length as well. And that's going to include the importance of work experience, helping your career as a student, and what employers are looking for in fresh graduates. We're then going to talk a little bit about Edset Go mentoring, an introduction to that and the services that we offer. We're then going to talk a little bit about next steps and finish off with a Q&A at the end. So we'll start predominantly with me sort of going through and presenting. If you have questions, feel free to jot them down. I'm sure you can put them in the chat if there is such a function, and you can do that now, we can do that later, and we'll cover them in the final segment of the session today.
Fantastic. So feel free to use the event chat to keep sending in your thoughts, messages. And we're keen to personalize this as much as possible. The value of bringing someone like Russell into this group is also the personalized advice we can get from him during the session as well. Back to you, Russell.
Sure. And Zubair, if you can help me with sort of collating the questions or passing them on at the relevant time, that'd be great, because I can't see. Yeah. Perfect. Okay. Excellent. Okay, so quick introduction, everybody. So as Zubair said, my name is Russell Brown. The founder at Edset International, which is my company based out of Hong Kong. I've been helping international students and working with international students and universities since 2010. I was actually immediately since I finished my degree program, I went straight into the world, or the continued world of international education and helping students to go and study overseas in a number of different capacities. I was brought up in the UK and the US, and I'm currently living in Canada. I'm a speaker of Chinese, English, and Spanish. I studied Chinese at university, lived in mainland China for about 5 years, had 2 years in Colombia where I picked up Spanish, and then my mother tongue is English. But I've been through that journey of not just studying overseas and working overseas, but adapting to the language and the culture that comes with that, and is a very, very important part of that as well. I studied the majority of my schooling in the UK, including my GCSEs and A levels. I went to Millfield School, which is a very sports-focused school in Somerset for my A levels. This is before the days of A stars, so I didn't attain that grade, but did come out with a few A's, which helped me to get into the University of Manchester, where I studied languages. My degree was a 4-year degree. The majority are 3 years in the UK, but if you're including placement years or sandwich years, or if you're including a year of study abroad, then often it's 4 years. It can also be 5 years if you're bundling with the masters. Mine was 4 years, including a 1 year period of study at China Renmin University in Beijing, and the summer in Nice in France. As a student of languages, you have to go to the two countries where you're studying the languages. And then since graduating, I have spent my entire career, actually, apart from 1 year, working overseas. So that was mainland China, Hong Kong, Taiwan, Colombia, and now Canada. And I took a year back in the UK during that time as well. But the majority has been overseas, which has been really helpful and really interesting as well. And happy to share some of those experiences also. So moving on, study abroad, a case study. The person we're going to use for the case study is actually myself. Just because I've been through that journey, and studying abroad was indeed, to date, my best, most exciting and pivotal year. I think for you guys that are preparing to go and study overseas, whether that is short term, this year, next year, or even beyond, you really are coming up to what will be an unbelievably fruitful, interesting, challenging at times, but memorable and overwhelmingly, in most cases, positive experience. The things you'll see, the things you'll do, the things you'll eat, the places you'll visit, the people you will meet, all of that contributes to an experience which is really quite, at least to date, I would say, unrivaled in what else you're going to come across, with so much excitement and so much to look forward to. So I'm actually quite jealous that you guys are all coming up to that period in your journeys. For me, study abroad is something that I personally did in the past, but for those of you looking forward to that, it is a truly incredible time and really something to be excited about. These are a couple photos from my time, which I think represent a little bit of what I'm about. So that's my year was in Beijing, where they held the Olympics. That first photo is me watching the Brazil, Argentina, I think it was the semi-finals, if not the finals of the Olympics football in the Bird's Nest Stadium. And the second one kind of captures my interest in food and travel, as that was on the 48-hour train journey to Tibet from Beijing, which was also a fantastic experience. And for any of you who've been to China and sampled the slow trains out there, you'll know that can be quite an interesting journey. I wanted, as part of this case study, to focus on a couple of reflections. So, of course, a lot of it's fun. There's lots of excitement and tons for you guys to look forward to, but I wanted to share what I think were my top 4 decisions as an international student, and also to share a couple of things that I would have done differently if I was to go back and do it again. So these are, of course, related to my personal experience, but I think we can learn from the good and the less good decisions of others, and we can apply that potentially to what's coming up for us as a bit of counsel and advice. So my top 4 decisions as an international student. Number 1, I'm listing as the internship that I did before the academic year started. So academic year starts in late August, early September in Beijing. I knew I was going to Beijing. I knew I was doing a full academic year in China. I went at the start of July for a 2-month internship in Beijing, a different part of the city, with the goal of exposing myself to the world of work in a Chinese context, and getting my ear in. This was the primary objective, getting my ear in for the language before the start of the academic calendar. And the consequences of this were that, when I arrived at the university, I already had 2 months worth of having listened to more Chinese, having spoken more Chinese, and having been around that sort of day-to-day challenge and language situation, 2 months more than my other counterparts coming from the UK and other parts of the world had, which had a really helpful impact on my placement test and where I found myself in terms of level for that academic year, and was kind of the springboard for my language developing at a quicker rate than some of my classmates, just because I was there early, I was ready, my ear was in, and I had already done some of my adapting and my teething problems over the summer before I started studying. All the while, of course, getting some work experience and learning about the world of work as opposed to the world of study, which I started on in early September. So that was a huge one for me. The internship for the academic year started, and you'll hear me talk quite a bit about the importance of working while you study throughout this presentation. Number two was the choice to study and work in both countries. So whilst I was in Beijing, I also did some teaching of English. And when I went to France, I did an internship in a Virgin megastore, which certainly in the UK doesn't exist anymore. They might have a couple still in France, but it's essentially where you used to go to buy your games and your movies and various other forms of media. So I did that as part of my 3 months in France at the end of the year. And that decision to work alongside my studies is also what I'm ranking as a top decision. I also then rank my China versus France split. I knew that I wanted to focus more on China. I knew that I had more to do in terms of adapting to that language and that culture versus France or French, just because that's just so much closer to home. And I kind of planned my time accordingly, and I think that helped me to get the most out of that year. And then the other great decision that I feel like I made was traveling during the holidays instead of coming home. You've got this 12-month period, or I had this 12-month period, to absolutely get the most out of that time as possible. And I wanted to make sure that, with my parents' consent, of course, I came home, but once I'd had a chance to really benefit from and explore as much as possible my time out there. So that was a huge one. There's always a big piece of advice from me, which is to travel during your holidays and see life beyond the classroom wherever it is that you're going.
I want to
Three things I would. Oh yeah, go ahead, Zubair.
quick interruption. I know some of the students who'd be listening to this would be potentially going abroad, not like changing their country of origin in the first place. So they'll be going to somewhere new right at the beginning of their first year. But the China versus France split is actually more relevant than you'd imagine. So even if you're going to study abroad, let's say in the UK, most universities will also offer you a sandwich year or a year abroad. And I'd really encourage you to consider that as well. So even if you're, let's say, for me, I was based in Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, and then I went to London to the UK. On top of that, I could have taken another year out where I could have studied, for example, at the University of Toronto and had a different country and experience as well. So I think this is relevant to even students who are going, even if they're not doing a sandwich year, but you could think about that as an option during your full year course as well, because most universities will give you that opportunity to study abroad, even if you're abroad, let's say. But just wanted to quickly interrupt there. But back to you, Russell.
It's a really good point. Universities will offer like sandwich years in the form of either industrial placements, and or study abroad semesters or years. And I fully agree. Where possible, do try to take advantage of those. It's exposure to an additional language, it's potentially exposure to an additional culture, additional way of study, and just something which overall enriches that experience. My study abroad was only 1 year, unfortunately. I'm sure a lot of you are going to be looking at potentially doing your full degree out of your country of origin or out of your home country. And if you're doing your full degree there, that of course affords you more time to sprinkle in a semester there or a year there, which is absolutely one thing to consider if that's what you're interested in, for sure. Good point, Zubair. Thank you. So coming back to the three things that I would do differently, it's always good to reflect and think, okay, what went well and what went less well. Number one for me on what I would do differently is actually I would have probably thought differently about how I chose my university and my city in China. My criteria at the time was not the criteria that would have set me up for the greatest success in terms of language improvement. So the point of our year abroad as students of Chinese at the University of Manchester was to take that language learning to the next level. And I, at the time, as a youngster, chose to go to the city and the university where we had the most number of places for students from Manchester. I thought that would be kind of most fun and most familiar in terms of the number of classmates coming with me. But actually taking a step back and knowing how that year went, it would have been more beneficial for me and my language development at that time to choose one of the university options where we had a smaller number of places. There was an option in Zhejiang and in Nanjing, and there was an option in Jinan as well, where we only had 2 students that could go. Whereas to the university I went to, we had 6, with another 2 at a different uni in Beijing. So I think culturally and linguistically, I would have developed quicker had I chosen something perhaps a bit more challenging, which might have seemed less fun, but would have been more beneficial for sure to the language development. I also would have made more effort to try to make local friends and friends from other cultures. So I refer to that as other international students, but from other countries of origin. Of course, that did happen. I did some of that, but I could have done more. And that is very much tied to the point number 1 in terms of making a more fulfilling and more enriching experience. And I would have developed my Chinese quicker had I done that. So that's a couple of pieces of advice that I always mention to students who are considering where to go study is, can they take that information and apply it to their own thought process and considerations? And then I also would have spent less time playing video games, to be completely honest. We studied in the mornings. It's typically 8 till 12. We had lunch, and I probably could have used some of my afternoon time a little bit better throughout the year. But it is what it is, and it's always good to reflect. And if that can resonate with somebody else who maybe leaves the laptop or leaves certain games at home, then that's a positive as far as I'm concerned. So moving on now to key considerations when we're thinking about study abroad. There are so many things that are going to be exciting, but are going to require careful thought, careful consideration, and a lot of things to just wrap your head around before you go. Therefore, preparation and prioritization are absolutely key. And one of the things that I'm going to focus on a little bit more during this session, but also during my mentoring programs, is preparation for life and success outside or beyond the classroom, which is just as important as your success and your readiness inside the classroom, because the two are very closely linked. If you are excelling in your personal, social, beyond the classroom life, it is going to set the stage for your continued happiness and success inside the classroom. And similarly, if you feel like you're doing well academically inside the classroom, that will set the stage for you to have a positive experience and a good mental approach and experience outside of the classroom as well. So the two really are very closely linked. In the past, I've worked with a number of students who are academically very, very sound, fantastic grades, excellent IELTS scores before they went to study abroad, but because they've encountered perhaps cultural issues or social problems, whether it's culture shock or missing family or simply failing to adapt or really struggling with other pastoral social sides of things, it has greatly impacted the classroom side of things, so the grades and the success with the study materials. It's really important to make sure that the two are both looked after. So that's a very key point. So these considerations can include, how are you going to make friends? This is probably one of the questions that I get asked most, and is one of the biggest things that students are concerned about, is how am I going to settle in? Are people going to like me? I'm not that confident about the English or whatever language it is. How am I actually going to settle and make friends? This can also include thinking about potential challenges that you're going to face. So I like to categorize these challenges into two areas. One are general challenges and two are individual challenges. And it's important to make this distinction, because it's very easy to say that when you go and study overseas, you might encounter culture shock, or when you go to study overseas, you might feel lonely or you might miss your family. Those are general challenges that a lot of students might and do indeed encounter when they're studying overseas, but they might not apply to you as the individual. So it's important to familiarize yourself with what are some of the general common problems that people do encounter, and then cross-check that against what actually is more likely and less likely to apply to you and you as a person in your individual case. And then once you've listed out those challenges and thought about that, then to think about how you might overcome them. And some of that you can do relying mostly on yourself, other things you might need help or guidance from others for, and different approaches for different things. So that's also a really important part of getting ready to go study overseas, is what are the challenges that I'm likely to encounter? How can I prepare to overcome them? And this is all part of being a good anticipator and anticipating things rather than letting them happen to you when you get there. Really important part of preparation. This can also include how to deal with different types of new people. So inevitably, going to study overseas for a prolonged period of time, you're going to meet with university staff and facility staff and people in restaurants and classmates and people that you live with who are from different walks of life, different backgrounds, different practices, different beliefs, and it's going to be different to perhaps what you grew up with. So again, anticipating and thinking in advance about what that might look like and how to prepare for it. We talked a little bit about the culture point. And then I like to stress this one as well. So the importance of language, confidence, and confidence in your language, because these are actually three different things. You can be very confident and weaker at the language. You can be very good at the language, but less confident. And then, of course, to tie that all together, you want to have confidence in your language skills. And there's a number of ways that you can make sure that that is, as an ongoing process, is something which is continually being improved. And then a very important one for me as well is, what are you going to do to bolster your career prospects while you are studying? So there's a lot that can be done, and I have a future slide about that, which we'll take a look at in a moment. So moving on now to a few beyond the classroom do's and don'ts. I'm going to get all 5 of these up and go through them. So 5 big do's for me. Number 1, I'm already starting to talk about this a couple of times now, you've probably noticed, work while you study. Very, very important. It is a huge part of enriching your overall experience, but it's also a huge part of making yourself attractive to employers afterwards and ready to step into a career when you finish your study. I can't really stress that one enough. Travel, sports and clubs, and hobbies. Again, this is part beyond the classroom of enriching and ensuring that you have an experience overall which is as beneficial and positive for you as it can be. So of course you want to go and get your degree and have good grades and be academically successful, but don't leave behind the other stuff. When I think about my year abroad, and also just my time as a student in Manchester, and my time at high school, actually, my fondest memories and the memories that are most at the forefront of what I reflect on are not at all in the classroom, actually. It's the stuff I did around it. It's the school trips that we took. It's the football matches that we had in the winter. It's the athletics matches that we had over the summer. And it's some of the other hobbies that I pursued. And I'm sure for a lot of you, you'll get to that stage as well, where when you reflect on that wider experience, it's actually the academic stuff is, of course, key, but might not necessarily be the most fun and stuff that stays with you the longest in terms of positive memories. So really remember the importance of that and how it is key to ensuring that full overall positive experience. Make local and other international friends. I'm going to focus mostly on this other international friends point. This is really one that's worth considering, because a lot of students, before they go overseas, if they are nervous about their language, if they are nervous about making friends, in making other international friends is a really good way to overcome those things at the same time. Language-wise, a lot of these students coming from other international countries, they're in the same boat as you. They're also going to another place which is not their home country. They're also going to be operating in a language which is not their mother tongue, and they're going through that exact same journey of adaptation and adjustment which you're going through as well. In terms of language, that means they're going to be making some of the same mistakes, they're going to be encountering some of the same challenges, but they're also going to be much more sympathetic and understanding if you're making any mistakes with your language. So these other international friends doesn't mean if you're a student from country X making lots of friends from students who are also from country X. That means, for example, when I was a student in China, that means making friends with the students from Korea and Thailand and Germany and speaking to them in Chinese, not in English, because in that way it's kind of a safe space where we were all going through that Chinese language learning journey together, making the same mistakes, finding the same struggles, but getting through it at the same time in the same way. And that was really, really helpful. It's a very sympathetic audience compared to just trying to make friends with other Brits, or if you're going to Germany, just German people, or, you know, you can apply that to wherever you go. So really lean into other international connections and friends. It's also great for building out your network and future opportunities after you graduate. So that refers specifically to students who are also studying overseas, but not from your country. Listen to others, but make decisions for you. This is something that you're going to have to go through yourself. Listen to the counsel and the advice and the experiences of other people, whether that's your parents or your teachers or your guidance counselors or me on this presentation or whoever it may be. Sponge up the information, pick out bits that are relevant to you and helpful and interesting. But at the end of the day, you need to make decisions for you. So this is a skill and something which is important, not just for study abroad, but all throughout your later life and your career as well. Even if you don't agree with other people, it's important to form well-rounded decisions, taking into account what other people might feel or think or say, and go through the exercise of applying that information to what you also think and make decisions that are suitable for you and suitable for the greater goal, but with the counsel of others and with the input from others, because that you will get that as you go through everything in life. And then another huge point number 5 here, which I probably would put nearer the top, is to get out of your comfort zone. There are a lot of quotes about how nothing happens in the comfort zone, and life starts when you step out of the comfort zone. It can be difficult, it can be challenging, but again, you will enrich your experience, and the most exciting things that can happen to you sometimes only really happen when you get out of your comfort zone and you push yourself to do things which are not easy and not comfortable. So while you're a student, it's the perfect time to make some mistakes. You still have your training wheels on. Get in the habit while you're young and during that study time of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone so you can set the tone for doing that in future life as well. A few don'ts. Don't be afraid of making mistakes, and don't be afraid of asking for help, especially on the language side. Anywhere that you go, people are going to be very sympathetic to the fact that you are learning a completely different language, functioning day to day in a different language and in a different thought process. They do not mind if you make the odd grammatical mistake. Speaking from a UK perspective, people, we don't know our own grammar. We've not studied it like international students of English. We make our own mistakes. We make our own spelling mistakes. Nobody speaks any language perfectly. I found the same in China with different dialects and different approaches to the language, province to province, and even city to city. So don't be afraid of these things, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Often when you ask for help as well, people really like to be put in that position of being able to help and being able to assist. It's kind of like giving a compliment to somebody. So you solve your own problems and you make somebody else feel good sometimes when you do that. So don't be afraid to do it. Do not underestimate the power of attitude. First impressions is linked to this. The way that you approach your study and the way that you approach work afterwards is related to this. Attitude is extremely important, and it's a tone setter for everything that's going to happen to you and fall into place or fall out of place thereafter. Don't take things for granted, and don't stop trying to learn and grow. Everything is a continual journey. And we all continue to learn and grow as we go through not just the study abroad period, but beyond into our lives as professionals and the world of work and starting families if that's what we want to do and so on.
Russell, can we take a quick pause? Some people in the audience aren't able to see the screen, so I was just wondering if you could stop sharing and reshare it. It might help in just kicking it off again.
Sure. Stop sharing.
From your Discord, yeah.
Discord, yeah, okay. I'm in the stage again. Okay, stop streaming. I have stopped streaming.
Yep. And can we try that again?
And now I will reshare.
Does that help for some of you who were facing some issues? Yes, works perfect.
Excellent.
Just a little bit about. Yeah, perfect. Let's keep going. Thanks for that.
Okay. Thanks for flagging. No worries. So we're now going to focus a little bit more on the work side of things. So, as I've mentioned earlier on in the presentation, work experience and taking into account the focus here of things beyond the classroom, of course, exposing yourself to the world of work while you are studying. This can apply to high school, this can apply to university, master's degree, whatever it is extremely important. So, of course, degree and career and the consideration of both and what you explore when thinking about a degree and a career are typically, but not always, very closely linked. There are certain degrees that you can choose which keep options open more generally, and then there are others which you can choose which will funnel you down a path which is a little bit more predetermined. Something like veterinary sciences or medicine is one of the latter examples. Something like studying English literature, for example, as a native English speaker, or studying a lot of humanities subjects, for example, are kind of the keeping the options open degrees. But generally speaking, these two are quite closely linked, and it will inform subject choices and other things like that. The more you engage with the world of work alongside your studies, the better. So it is a basic expectation from hiring managers and companies that graduates already have work experience when they finish their degrees. The more the better. Obviously, you don't want to do so much that you impact your ability to stay on top of your studies, but the more that you can expose yourself to the world of work alongside your studies, the better it is, especially as an international student. And that's because of point number 3 here. So as an international student, if you're working while you study, you're going to be encountering different people, language, relationship dynamics, and culture than compared to that which you will find inside the university environment. So people are going to talk to each other differently. That whole manager-employee relationship, the customer, the relationship you have as a service provider with your clients and with your customers, the relationship dynamics between different types of people. It's all very different to what you'll find inside the school or the uni environment, and really, really beneficial to expose yourself to that earlier rather than later, so that when you come to the point of graduating and looking for a job, the hiring managers and the companies can see, okay, this person already knows a little bit about how to act in a workplace, or how to deal with customers, or how to deal with colleagues, or how to deal with management and those types of relationships that you will have to engage with once you enter the world of work. Studying and working, of course, helps you get the most out of your experience overseas. It's not just about the classroom. And being able to juggle effectively work and study shows you to be initiative-taking, proactive, and it makes you a better rounded job seeker. So again, a big thing that job seekers look for is that ability to take initiative and be proactive and manage time. These are soft skills which are very highly valued. And if you can demonstrate the ability to handle work and study, that goes away towards proving some of those points. So the various forms of work experience that you can do as you study. You've got internships. They can be paid or unpaid. You've got sandwich or placement years, which typically is 1 full year in the middle of your degree program, usually in year 3, sometimes in year 2. You can engage in part-time work. Depending on where you are going to study, the rules from an immigration standpoint or a visa standpoint will be different. But using the UK as an example, you can engage in part-time work up to 10 or 20 hours per week during term time. It's 10 hours a week if you're pre-degree level. It's 20 hours per week if you're degree level or higher. And during the holidays, you can work full-time if you so desire. That's the next point, which is holiday work. You can do work shadowing, so perhaps a little bit less of you actually executing on work yourself, but for professions like again doctors or vets or lawyers and things like that, shadowing somebody as they go about their day is a form of work experience, is a way to build the network, and is a good way to learn new things. There's also, of course, volunteer work. Doesn't pay. That may or may not be important or a consideration, but it shows a different side of your values and what you deem to be important, and adds a different experience angle to your background as well. And then there's, of course, entrepreneurship, if you'd like. And I'm sure Zubair can talk to you about this as well. A lot of people, while they are students, they have business ideas, or they have other things that they realize they would like to start as a student. You can, of course, look at that as well. But there's lots and lots of things you can do for work experience. And the key point is,
I was just going to say that I was wondering whether you'd include this example, but yes, absolutely. As many of you may know, I was developing and working on ZNotes throughout my school and also my university years. And I think I just wanted to highlight one of the points you made, Russell, which is around juggling and time management. I think a university degree is more expansive than you can ever imagine. Um, it is a high responsibility on you to be able to manage getting to a lecture, getting your problem classes done, getting your homeworks or tasks completed. But at the same time, that flexibility gives you a lot of ways to engage with the world outside the classroom, as you've been talking about, Russell. So that whether that is through social activities, whether that's through sports, whether that's through hobbies, or whether that's through work experiences. And I think I was able to combine things that I enjoyed doing, like my running career, let's say, as well as developing ZNotes, as well as actually I did a lot of kind of projects on various initiatives as well along the way. I did a lot of advocacy work as well through kind of volunteer work. So I think it just gets very rich. You just need to be kind of receptive to these opportunities. But I think something that's super important for me, and now that I think back, was the ability to manage my time, because there's so much to do, and you just need to be super clear about how you balance your academics so that your work experience doesn't negatively affect it, but at the same time just augments it. So definitely a very, very important aspect of your experience abroad and experience as a university student.
Thanks, Zubair. And it comes back to one of the early points, in line with what Zubair just said about prioritization and preparation. So, don't bite off more than you can chew. Work out what's priority and when. You don't have to go in year one immediately into doing tons of work experience and trying to start a company and volunteering every Thursday at the local dog shelter. Not necessary. You can adapt, you can find your feet, and then start to sprinkle in bits of work experience when you find that you have the time, and when you know what your routine is like, and when you feel like you're able to stay on top of the academics and manage your time efficiently. Time management is super important. And that, again, is one which will stay with you throughout life. And it just doesn't just apply to the study part of the journey. So, yeah, really good points. Thank you, Zubair. So if we move on to the next bit here, there are, beyond actually doing work itself, there are a lot of things that you can be doing as a student while you are a student to help your career. So this can include using university career services. I personally think this is a really underused resource in a lot of cases. Most of my friends at university did not use the university career services as much as they could have done. They have assistance with CV writing, with jobs or internship opportunities that are posted specifically for students of University X, Y, or Z. The university I went to, University of Manchester, offered a career mentorship program, which I engaged with. And actually, I had specific requirements or preferences for the type of mentor that I was looking for. And what the university did, which was great, was they didn't have anybody on board that met those requirements, but they went out and approached a recent alumni from 2 or 3 years prior and just asked that person, hey, we have a student who's seeking this. Would you be willing to be a mentor? Yes, he was. And they paired us up accordingly. So, they went above and beyond what they just had on their books to find somebody that could be helpful and beneficial for me, which I really appreciated. And there's tons of universities that do that. And that was a really interesting and relevant connection for me at the time, which was 100% facilitated by the university. You've also got your personal tutor and professors who you can speak to. These are people who are vastly experienced, experts in their particular field, and will be able to offer, beyond just what they're talking to you about in the classroom, lots of information and insights about the world of work or the world of academia, and just, particularly as relates to their area of expertise. Universities will put together job fairs that you can go and attend. Some of those will be on campus, some of them can be off campus, university organized themselves or third party. Those are things to go and attend. The university I went to attended many guest speaker sessions where they invited in people from specific fields or specific companies to come and talk to us as the students. Go and attend those sessions. This one for me is one that's particularly close to home. So, as Zubair mentioned, I went to work for Into for nearly 10 years after finishing university. It was my first job out of university, and it was also my last job before I set up Edset. This photo, that's me second from the left, and the guy on the far right was my last boss at Into. He's one of the co-founders. He sits on the board. He was the one that actually hired me into the company when I first finished studying, and that's because he came to Manchester to speak to us, the group of Chinese studying students, to say, hey, we've got 3 internship places over the summer. We're going to send you to 3 different places in China. And at the end of it, there's a job for one or two of you. And it's just because I went to engage in that session that I was able to meet Stephen and find that opportunity and go from there. And, 14 years afterwards, we were still working together, which is, all came from that initial interaction. So the university will facilitate these opportunities and absolutely go and engage with them. You can also join business competitions and debating. That's obviously putting into practice some business acumen and getting yourself exposed to things that you will be doing in the world of work. And you're also meeting people of similar mind, which is great. Can join relevant clubs and practice networking. And you can also, this is a really good one as well, that people often overlook, reach out to recent or otherwise graduates from the same program, or it could be from a different program, same faculty, different faculty. In the 2 years immediately after I finished my studies at Manchester, I had 2 students who were coming up as year 2 and year 3 students underneath me, asking questions about China and asking questions about how to find a job and asking questions about getting into the field of international education. I was very happy to speak to and help these students. I met with them, one of them over the internet and one of them in person. I also helped one of them get his first job after university in a town next to Shanghai. He wanted to go to China in the same field. These graduates are often very helpful, very willing to help, and like I said before, they find a bit of pride, and it kind of gives them something as well to give back. So reach out to these people. You can find them on LinkedIn, you can find them in other channels as well, and they're often a really, really good resource for you. So take into account these other things that you can do to help your career as a student as well. And then a little note on what employers are looking for in fresh graduates. So of course you have your degree. And that for many jobs and many companies is a requirement. We'd like to see that you have a degree. Some of them will have specific field of study requirements and some will not. But beyond that, as mentioned previously, work experience is a basic requirement now for, and has been for quite some time, for students at the point of graduation. So do not start thinking about work experience when you graduate. You need to think about it before and along with your studies. Soft skills, is another big one. So soft skills refer to non-technical skills that inform the way that you engage effectively with others around you. So that is things like we've talked about already: time management, leadership, communicational skills, interpersonal skills. Creativity is a soft skill. Generally, non-technical things that are more difficult to teach, but there are certain attributes which make candidates very attractive for certain positions compared to others. And different jobs will have different different levels of jobs and different industries will have different soft skill requirements compared to others, but they are very, very helpful and things that you can work on yourself. International experience, I'm going to translate as well to varied experience. So international experience could mean just studying in a place which was different to that which from which you came, but that can also refer to different experiences alongside your studies. So like Zubair said, go and do a semester abroad or go and do a year abroad if you have that opportunity from where you're studying as the host institution. Employers and hiring managers are also looking for students or candidates that have the ability to bring fresh ideas and new perspectives. So this relates to when you're going through the interview process, the confidence, the ability, and the creativity to express yourself honestly, and not be afraid of sharing some new ideas, which maybe you don't know if they're 100% correct, but at least having the thought and the initiative and sharing it is something that a lot of hiring managers mention as something that they view very important during the hiring process. So how can you convey those? They look for students that have the personality and the culture fit for the company. So that culture typically is referring to company culture, and then there's different personality traits that will fit better than others. And then especially as AI continues to explode, and the use of machines in the world of work continues to explode, employers now, when they are looking for graduates and to fill graduate roles, are increasingly looking for things that cannot be easily taught and things that machines cannot do, or things that are more difficult for machines to do. So you want to think hard about how can you cement your relevance alongside a machine or in lieu of a machine as you go into the world of work. So the World Economic Forum has said that the skills most in demand from employers over the next 5 years will include analytical thinking, empathy, it's quite difficult for machines to be empathetic, active listening, leadership, and social influence. So that's from the WEF. Think about things that machines cannot do, things that make you human, and how you can apply that to your advantage moving forward into the world of work. And then one point which is specific to international students is, of course, if you're looking for that job in your country of study, is a high level of English or the local language and cultural understanding as well. Because of course they're going to need you to be communicating with clients, they're going to need you to be communicating with colleagues and other things like that. So we've got a few other pearls that I just want to share. Pearls of wisdom is where this comes from. So I'm going to share a few. I can't interact with you guys as well as I hoped because I can't see the comments, but I just want to share 3 things which resonate with me really well from people who are kind of inspirational thought leaders. I don't know if you guys know who these came from, but I'll give you a very quick opportunity to guess or write down in chat who you think made these statements. Oh, Zubair can help. Okay, perfect. So let's learn how to get stuff done. Does anybody know who said that as relates to, this is specifically advice to college graduates from somebody that you'll all know about how to be an effective worker? You know who said this? Just learn how to get stuff done. So greater context, I've seen at every level, people who are very good at describing problems, people who are very sophisticated in explaining why something went wrong or why something can't be fixed. But what I'm always looking for is, no matter how small the problem is or how big it is, somebody who says, let me take care of that. If you project an attitude of whatever it is that's needed, I can handle it and I can do it, then whoever is running that organization will notice, I promise. Anybody know?
Any guesses in the chat? I don't know either. This is a lot of context as well. Oh, wow.
This one's Barack Obama. So I like this one because it's just very to the point. Learn how to get stuff done. There's lots of fluff out there, but especially as someone that's new to the world of work and trying to make a name for yourself, if you can be known within your team or within your company as somebody who gets stuff done, it's an immensely helpful and valuable tag or reputation to have, and that will serve you very, very well moving forward. It's not that helpful to go to your boss or go to a colleague and say, we have this problem. But it's very helpful to go to your boss and colleague and say, we have this problem and I've already thought about how to fix it. Here's the solution. Learn how to get stuff done. Really, really, really good advice from Barack. This is the second one. When you go to a small company, you learn the passion, you learn the dreams, you learn how to do a lot of things at one time. Before you're 30 years old, it's not so much which company you go to, it's more about which boss you follow. It's very important. A good boss teaches you differently. So I really like this one because it resonates with me personally. I've been very fortunate to work with some really good bosses in the early stages of my career. I've also worked for companies that are bigger and companies that are smaller, and I really agree with this statement. In the early stages of your career, you still have time to make mistakes. You still have time to, if something goes wrong, pick yourself up and learn from it. You will learn a lot of really interesting things in